guest speaker.
Yeah.
Many other commitments. He's all the time behind the camera, you know, and getting the latest footage on so much that is happening in the country. So Rajiv, we mute everybody.
They'll do it themselves. You don't mute. They will do it, Pram.
Rajiv, we've muted everybody.
Quorum is complete.
Yeah, and no, it's not complete, but please mute everybody. We will, our members would be joining, I suppose, you know, that process.
Rajiv can mute everybody, no? He should do.
Yeah. So Rajiv, you've muted everybody. Okay, thank you very much. And very good evening to all my very, very dear friends. I'm giving you all a virtual hug because we've already gone through the first shot and many more to come. So as we go through this beautiful month of March with this wonderful takeaway experience of romance, hope, joy, color, aroma, art and music, because we celebrate spring and then Holi, the narration of little known narratives of the region of Jammu, Kashmir and Ladakh becomes a befitting theme, I think, for our fellowship this month. So we know that this is the region of apples, almonds, walnuts, saffron, and pashmina, and the most intricate embroideries. It is also a land of holy shrines, monasteries, and tankas. But there is still much more to learn about this mystic land, and so to narrate untold stories of this region through her short films, we have with us this evening Aradhana Kohli Kapur, who wandered all over the erstwhile state of Jammu, Kashmir and Ladakh and brought for us these fascinating tales. Before we go over to Aradhana, I will very briefly introduce her, even though there is much more to say about her accomplishments. So Aradhana has had over 2 decades of experience in social communication, making myriad programs for organizations such as Doordarshan, UNICEF, British High Commission, and the Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India. She's a postgraduate in International Relations, Jawaharlal Nehru University, and then a postgraduate in filmmaking and mass communications from Jamia Millia University. Aradhana has directed film festivals, produced and directed documentaries, television series, and films. Women, children, contemporary history, culture, and environment are her recurring themes. She's a member of the International Association of Women in Radio and TV, which is an NGO working with the UN Economic and Social Council. Her films have been screened at Toronto, UK, and USA film festivals. Her films, The Patient Stone, won the Audience Award at the Himalayan Film Festival, Amsterdam. And Aradhana is the executive director of Enable India and Rabison Films. So Aradhana, we invite you over into our virtual gathering. And before we, as a part of our beginning with the conversation and you're telling us all the stories, I would just first like to ask you that, you know, actually in the midst of terrorism and in the midst of militancy, what took you to Jammu, Kashmir and Ladakh and to make these wonderful films?
Thank you so much for having me over and for the kind words. I feel quite overwhelmed. Yes, you're right. I think my family, my friends, my colleagues, everybody was convinced that I was insane mad, wanting to go to a place which had been called the most dangerous place on earth at that time. We're looking at middle of 2002 onwards. Till, you know, that's when I started going. I think there were many reasons why I wanted to visit. I think there was a family connection, and then, you know, I had just finished making 2-3 films for the Ministry of External Affairs, and one day we were having a discussion, and at the core of it was really that at that time it was just about a decade of militancy, and, you know, does a decade of militancy impact millennia of oneness to this extent or not. I think that was, really the curiosity which took me to kind of explore these halfway journeys, which I kind of knew about and I didn't kind of know about, to know more about them, to see that really, what is it culturally, socially, historically, which makes us all one land, the idea of India. I think that's what I really wanted to explore, because the more I read about it, I felt this was really the melting pot where all the influences were there. So that's how I went on this journey. Militancy
So did you find anything which affected something that was going on because of militancy? I think I saw one of your films.
Many things. In fact, that is what I really learned, that how it had affected people's lives, and I think what I learned from this was really not to think in terms of binaries, good, bad, right, wrong. I understood that there were always many other shades. I realized how certain dishes were not being cooked in the Vazwan, because if they pounded the meat, it would create too much noise. I discovered that, Srinagar did not have a recorded history of even a murder FIR at the police station. It was such a peaceful state before militancy came. So many things, like that I kind of discovered. Kupwara, Baramulla, Dardpura. I went to places which I had not even heard of, really. Dardpura was a village beyond Kupwara on the border, which was the story that took me there. It was because it had become a village of widows. And to me, I thought dard, as in dard, as we say in North India. But when I went there, it was probably a kind of evolution of Dardpura, the Dards. And they spoke a language very akin to Punjabi. So, and it was the first time they were meeting an outsider like me. So I came back full of many, many things and many, I think, stories, and they kind of just tumbled out once.
So would you like us to see your film on Lost Harmony to begin with?
Yes, please. Yes.
So Rajiv, we can have that film.
Yeah, and I'll mute myself.
In these labyrinth lanes of downtown Srinagar, just a little away from Zena Kadal and Badshah's tomb, as the Jhelum flows almost without a ripple, a pair of hands is deftly at work in a workshop, which is more of an attic really. The last of 8 generations of craftsmen, Rahmanju is perhaps more of an artist. As he sits in his workshop, shaping blocks of wood and turning them into instruments capable of emitting sublime notes of music.
यूं ही लकड़ी का एक टुकड़ा इधर से उठाएंगे, वो क्या बेजान है उस वक्त? जब हम उसको जान देंगे, ज़बान देंगे, फिर ये बज जाएगा.
He makes almost all instruments, rababs, sitars, but it is the santoor which is his speciality. It is a string instrument and a direct descendant of the Ved Veena, one of the oldest musical instruments to be found in India. As Rahmanju gazes at the Jhelum from his window, he remembers the time his little workshop hummed with activity, a time when musical swaris, baithaks and Sufiana kalams were a part of everyday life.
हाँ होते थे. बैठक लगती थी इधर, वो बजाते हैं उधर, बैठते हैं, बुजुर्ग लोग सुनते हैं सूफियाना मौसीकी.
Then ill winds blew, changing everything forever. This centuries-old musical tradition was frowned upon and almost became taboo.
क्योंकि कुछ डिस्टर्बेंस भी हुई है, इसलिए वो साज अब चलते नहीं है.
Pandits who played and taught the santoor left the valley in terror, leaving behind a silence and a void.
बहुत आनंद से बैठते थे वो पंडित लोग. जब पंडित लोग यहाँ से चले गए, उनका शौक भी बैठ गया वो.
By the time normalcy returned, tastes had changed, perhaps forever.
उनमें आजकल के ज़माने में यही समझो, यही डांस शांस वगैरह ऐसा ही फिल्मी गाने आए, वो खूब खुश होते हैं.
But it is a matter of quiet pride for Rahmanju that all famous exponents of this instrument play santoors which have been made by him, as they enthrall listeners at home and across the world.
जब कोई साज बजाता है ना, हमको मालूम होता है कि ये हमारा साज है. जब किसी और का साज होता है, वो तो मालूम पड़ जाए वो हमारा नहीं है.
For him, his work has never been just merely a means of livelihood, but
ऐसे लोगों को समझना चाहिए, ये इबादत ही है.
So he continues to sit in his little corner, single-handedly shaping blocks of wood into instruments capable of creating divine melody.
That was very interesting, Aradhana.
Thank you.
Okay. So anything else which particularly sort of you found very, very peculiar, or okay, I mean, like something which maybe we wouldn't know that also happens in Srinagar? Any other experience?
You know what, I would like to tell you that there were many things which are very things that I didn't know. For instance, the next film that you have picked up, this was a film on a practice which is very unique to the valley, and it's called Darud. And the first time I heard, I thought, you know, we were staying in this guest house, and I said, is there a Gurdwara somewhere here? Because for me, that is, you know, what it sounded like. And then I realized that, you know, then I did more research that these were just after the prayers, after doing the namaz, then everybody together would recite the verses from the Quran, and in this really melodious manner. And as I found out more about it from the old Khanaka, then there is a contract which was signed at the time when you know, they converted to Islam, saying that this is something we are going to continue to do. So after prayers, always they recited verses from the Quran. And it was only at the time of militancy that, you know, this kind of became subdued, because for the version of Islam that came from that side, music was frowned upon. And but still, you know, when we went and shot, it was still happening. So I think when you see it, you will also realize that it's something really unique and beautiful.
Okay. So Rajiv, we can have the next one, which is called Divine Music.
Indians seldom pray in silence or alone. They love to pray together and ensure that their prayers are being heard. For across India, communion with God is a joyous celebration of life. Chanting and singing are an inherent and integral part of all indigenous faiths. And even religions, which came from afar and took root in the Indian soil, soon evolved and adapted to this social milieu, internalizing existing idioms and practices. You can see this in Jammu and Kashmir as well. While the monasteries in Ladakh resound with chants and symbols, the ziyarats and temples of the valley and Jammu have their own code of rituals, which perhaps have more in common to each other than in other parts of the country, because Islam did not arrive with the sword here, but it came like a gentle breeze, slowly turning the temples into khanikas. As wise men and philosophers fleeing their own countries in Central Asia because of religious persecution reached Kashmir seeking refuge, they felt safe in their adopted land and began to preach their faith. In khanikas and the ziyarats, they spoke of one God, of one truth, love for fellow beings, of humility and truthfulness. This, to the locals, sounded not new, but familiar, not different, but akin to the basic tenets of their own faith of monoistic Shaivism. Thus soon, the new faith took root as it adapted to its new followers' age-old beliefs. In fact, a contract was signed to safeguard these beliefs, the original of which lies in a deep vault inside the old Khanika in Srinagar. Amongst other things, the contract specifies permission to continue to chant the Lord's name aloud and together. And so, till today in Kashmir, Darood is an integral and inherent part of prayer. Verses from the Holy Book are chanted aloud in a group by the faithful, in a practice which perhaps is unique to Kashmir. As these ancient walls of the Khanikas resound with the beauty and sanctity of this chanting, all in the vicinity feel at peace and one with their Creator.
Yeah, no wonder you kept the name of the series as Integral India. Another very interesting.
Can I just, sorry,
interesting,
can I just also interrupt? The other thing I found very fascinating was, like, you know, we have the bells outside the temples. So every Khanika there has this metal thing at the gate, which is again words from the Quran written, and everybody who walks in touches it. And there it is very common to see a green cloth and the red dupatta that is used in the Devi temples in the rest of the country, you know, chadhaud by the people at the dargahs. So it was really inclusive to my mind. And I think you can see it in some of the shots also. Sorry, please go on.
No, and I was saying that another very interesting film that I saw, your film I saw, was where there is an, you know, where it integrates Kerala and Kashmir. I mean, like, as they say, from Srinagar, Kashmir to Kanyakumari through cricket bats. Can we have that one?
Yeah, and there's a lot of Kerala Kashmir connection actually. Yeah, let's watch the Halmala film.
Ma'am, sorry, just I believe Amita ma'am have some questions. Ma'am has raised her hand.
Yeah. Unmute Amita ma'am. Raji.
Amita, do you have a question? Your hand is raised. Or was it by mistake? Okay, I understood that it was by mistake.
Okay, so we go on with the next one.
On the national highway, as one drives from Srinagar to Jammu, suddenly the willow and poplar trees give way to cricket bats on both sides of the road. Bats of every size and make dot the landscape like mushrooms. For we are now in Halmula, where every family is involved in making cricket bats. The willow trees, which grow around them, provide the wood in abundance. So obviously then, the making and selling of cricket bats is everyone's business.
यहाँ तो सब तकरीबन सारे यही काम करते हैं। कम से कम 100-150 परिवार ये काम करते हैं इस इलाके में।
But it was not always like this. Halmula became the hub of the Indian bat industry by default. Just after partition, a sports good manufacturer of Jalandhar was deep in trouble. All his suppliers were suddenly across the border in Pakistan. He needed the willow for his products, and fast. His search brought him to Halmula, the home of the willow, or Veer, as it is known locally.
उस वक्त ये पानी सपोर्ट उसका एक मिस्त्री यहाँ आया था, फिर उन्होंने वहाँ से एक बेंडसा और ये एक डीजल इंजन लिया और साथ ही उन्होंने कारीगर भी वहाँ से साथ लिया, जिन्होंने उसका फाउंडेशन यहाँ बनाया, सब कुछ किया था। तो पहले वहीं से मिस्त्री लाना पड़ता है, बैट बनाने के लिए भी, हैंडल बनाने के लिए भी, हर चीज़ के लिए भी वहीं से ही लाना पड़ता था। लड़के भर्ती हुई हैं, उन्होंने सीखा, फिर धीरे धीरे काम चालू हो गया।
A willow tree takes 15 years to mature, and the best quality wood is used for making bats. As the seasoned wood goes through various stages, its ultimate destination is to reach well-known hands across the world and create magic. It receives the final finishing touch with a flourish when the handle is fixed by hand on the bat. The handle is made from cane brought especially all the way from Kerala and the Andamans, as only that can provide the batsman the strength and flexibility to strike the ball hard, and thus a truly national product for a national obsession is born.
वो केन केरला से आते हैं, ये तो लचक है इसमें।
Come the World Cup or an important series, and Halmula rejoices, as it means more business, more work.
दिल खुश हो जाता है, हमारे लिए बैट इस्तेमाल हो जाता है, बिगड़ी भी बढ़ जाता है।
But you should be there in the photograph, not only.
Free time, if any, is spent, well, obviously, doing what else but playing cricket.
Breakfast,
Aradhana, actually, what made you think about these making a story on the bats? Had you heard about it earlier or something like that?
Yes, some of the stories were really by default because I had seen this small little cutting about this gentleman, and they were celebrating some anniversary. It was in the local paper. I don't know, it was 50 years of this industry having come there. And then I started finding out more about it. And actually, you can go on the highway and see this from far. It's like bats hanging everywhere. So yeah, different stories happened in different ways. Some by just straight research, something I knew about and went and found out more. I think each one was different, really.
Yeah. But is it true that I think maybe I'd heard from you that, this gentleman from Pakistan who after partition settled here, the pioneer person, he brought a willow tree sapling and
yeah, some of the, actually I did confirm that yes, this person's descendant did say so, but then the locals said that no, it had always been there. I think probably they must have grafted what came from there to improve the quality, and the local willow must have been there. But I didn't include it in the film because I thought it just might get very contentious, and I'll have people after my life, so I left it out.
Okay. So, so now the next film that we are going to have is Guru Lama, and something very, I should say, amazing you told me about it. What was that story that, after you had...
Yeah, so actually, I feel really humbled, and I feel full of gratitude that we probably are the only ones who have visual documentation of the original Gurdwara as it was made over years, because after that, the mudslide came and the structure was damaged to quite an extent, and it was rebuilt. In fact, I haven't been after it's been rebuilt, but yes, this is how it was. And the story behind it was also very fascinating, that I had seen the Gurdwara and, but then we met this border roads gentleman, elderly person, and he told us the story that when the roads were being made initially in the late 40s and 50s, every time the bulldozers would go and stop at that point. And then this CEO had a dream in which he said, there is something there and you should dig it out. And then they stopped the work, they dug out, and this rock came out, which is called Patthar Saban, which has the imprint of Guru Nanak's back on it. And then we pieced the story together. Yeah. And there's also a tree in downtown Leh, which is supposed to have been planted by it. And there's a little room where he's supposed to have stayed with Bala and Mardana. And because he always dressed on his udasis in the local fashion and manner, he was taken as one of their own. So yeah, this was a very fascinating story.
So Rajiv, can we have it?
He was true in the beginning. He was true when the ages commenced and has been true. He is also true now. Satguru Nanak says that he will certainly be true in future as well. While these immortal words from the Gurbani sound magical anywhere, here in this vast expanse of a cold desert, thousands of feet above the sea, amidst the starkness of the landscape, in the warmth of a Gurdwara, their essence somehow becomes crystal clear. This tiny Gurdwara, Gurdwara Shri Patthar Sahib Ji, is situated on the Srinagar-Leh road, just 25 kilometers short of Leh. It may not match the grandeur of the other better-known Gurdwaras, but not only did Guru Nanak Dev live and meditate here, he also fought a demon.
1517 ਈਸਵੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤਿੱਬਤ, ਨੇਪਾਲ, ਸਿੱਕਮ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੋਏ ਝਾਰਖੰਡ ਦੇ ਰਸਤੇ ਲੇਹ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪਹੁੰਚੇ ਨੇ। ਕੁਝ ਦਿਨ ਤਪੱਸਿਆ ਕਰਨ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਜਦੋਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕੀਰਤਨ ਆਰੰਭ ਕੀਤਾ, ਬਾਲਾ ਤੇ ਮਰਦਾਨਾ ਨਾਲ ਸੀ, ਲੋਕ ਇੱਥੋਂ ਦੇ ਇਕੱਤਰਤ ਹੋਏ ਨੇ। ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਕਿ ਸਾਧੂ ਮਹਾਤਮਾ ਕੋਈ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਗੁਰੂ ਨਾਨਕ ਦੇਵ ਜੀ ਜਿਸ ਇਲਾਕੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਸੀ ਉਹੋ ਜਿਹੇ ਹੀ ਪਹਿਰਾਵਾ ਪਹਿਨਦੇ ਸੀ। ਦੇਖ ਕੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਰਿਕੁਐਸਟ ਕੀਤੀ ਕਿ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਵਾਲੀ ਪਹਾੜੀ ਦੇ ਉੱਪਰ ਇੱਕ ਬਹੁਤ ਡੇਂਜਰ ਰਾਕਸ਼ਸ ਰਹਿੰਦਾ ਹੈ ਜੋ ਟਰਨ ਵਾਈਜ਼ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਖਾਂਦਾ, ਅਸੀਂ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਪਰੇਸ਼ਾਨ ਹਾਂ। ਗੁਰੂ ਨਾਨਕ ਦੇਵ ਜੀ ਕਹਿਣ ਲੱਗੇ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਉਸ ਰਾਕਸ਼ਸ ਦੀ ਕਰਕੇ ਹੀ ਇਸ ਜਗ੍ਹਾ 'ਤੇ ਪਹੁੰਚੇ ਹਾਂ ਔਰ ਇਸ ਜਗ੍ਹਾ 'ਤੇ ਬੈਠੇ ਹਾਂ। ਤਾਂ ਰਾਕਸ਼ਸ ਨੇ ਸੋਚਿਆ ਕਿ ਹੁਣ ਇਹ ਕਿਹੜਾ ਮੇਰੀ ਤਰਫ ਦੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਮਾਰ ਦਿੰਦਾ। ਵੱਡਾ ਪੱਥਰ ਉਹਨੇ ਗੁਰੂ ਨਾਨਕ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਜੀ ਦੇ ਉੱਪਰ ਸੁੱਟਿਆ। ਪੱਥਰ ਜਦੋਂ ਗੁਰੂ ਨਾਨਕ ਦੇਵ ਜੀ ਦੀ ਬੋਡੀ ਨਾਲ ਟੱਚ ਹੋਣ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਮੋਮ ਬਣ ਚੁੱਕਾ ਸੀ। ਮੋਮ ਬਣ ਕੇ ਗੁਰੂ ਨਾਨਕ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਦੀ ਪਿੱਠ ਲੱਗੀ ਹੋਈ ਹੈ ਪੱਥਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਜਿਸ ਨੂੰ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ ਪੱਥਰ ਪਿੱਠ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਨੇ।
Guru Lama, Nanak Lama and Guru Rinpoche were the names given to him by the locals during his stay. And till today, they revere him as their own.
Guru Rinpoche ne zuga ana shore ina shore ipajas kya koya.
हाँ जी, सब मानते हैं। लामा गुरु बोलते जी।
Nearly all who travel this road stop a while at Gurudwara Patthar Sahib. The devout to pay obeisance, the curious to know more about this quaint place of pilgrimage, and the hungry to enjoy piping hot langar, a meal from the community kitchen available at any time of the day. All thanks to the Indian Army who manage Gurdwara Patthar Sahib, so that those who come seeking the Guru Lama's divine presence return touched by it again and yet again.
What a pity, Aradhana, that the original one got destroyed. And what a blessing for you that you had the darshan before it was raised to the ground. Very interesting. But Aradhana, there is no story complete of Kashmir without the Pashmina shawl.
Yes.
Have something on that?
So yeah, we had planned to do a story on the Pashmina, as you very rightly said, that obviously, how can you not do a film on Pashmina and Kashmir? But interestingly, what happened, we were doing a film on, there's a small little place called Basoli, which is near Jammu, further towards the border near Akhnor. And it's really a small little town, obscure town, but Basoli paintings are a school of painting on their own, and they were quite the rage internationally. So they're different from the other Pahari paintings because and miniatures because they're not that delicate, and they use really earthy primary colors which came from the riverbed there. So they're really beautiful. We were doing that story. And while I was doing research for that, we realized that Basoli used to be really the hub and the birthplace of Pashmina. And that is where the Pashminas started. And as the trade routes changed, Basoli got left behind and the valley became the hub. And it was really exciting and interesting, and how the entire family gets together to make it. I think have a look. It'll be, all of us wear Pashminas and you'll know how it's made.
Yeah, true.
So much work goes into it.
Yeah. Nice. So Rajiv, let's have.
For the matted oily mass of a goat's underfleece, Pasham, Pashmina or Kashmir, has since time immemorial been much too much fussed over. It has inspired wars, been flaunted as a status symbol, and gifted with elan and received with pleasure. Even in the Vedas, the Ramayana and other ancient scriptures of India, one finds detailed references to it. Geographically, the story of Pasham begins in these high, lofty mountains. The Rig Veda describes ideal wool country as the Sindhu or Indus River basin and areas around the Iravati River or Ravi as we know it today. It also informs us that the sheep of the larger Gandhara region, known as Avi, are considered to provide the best wool. The legacy, perhaps, is intact. While the finest Pasham comes from Ladakh, some of the softest hand-woven shawls are made in Basoli, an obscure town on the banks of the Ravi near Jammu. Unknown to many, Pashmina shawls are still woven the old way here, since the shawls which are made in the Kashmir Valley are the ones which are famous the world over. From the place of its origin, Pashmina has travelled far and wide, right from the Indus Valley days. Through the Silk routes, the doshala, as it was known in Hindi, reached the Middle East, where it was called a shawl, only to become a shawl as it travelled further west and European royalty draped itself into its soft snugness. While its lure remained constant, techniques and designs continued to evolve and change, becoming more and more elaborate and intricate. Changing designs often reflected the political fortunes of the day. Even the king's whims and fancies, as these map shawls giving intricate details of the Dal Lake suggest. So popular were these shawls in the 18th century in Europe that British and French manufacturers began to produce machine-made imitations en masse. However, in India, traditionally, a single Pashmina shawl usually means the entire family has been involved at various stages of its production, which sometimes can take up to a year. Women, especially elder ones, card the pasham, making it ready for weaving, after which the male members weave and dye the shawls. Embroidery normally is done by both men and women. In this Pashmina story, just as the pasham continues to come from these snowy peaks and is transformed into beautiful shawls by these skilled hands, just so, woven or embroidered, the ambi or paisley, the leitmotif of India, continues to be one of the most popular designs which adorns these shawls. Some things surely don't change with time.
That was good. Rajiv, just make sure everybody is muted because, we keep getting some conversation going on and it gets a little distracting. Yeah. So, Aradhana, then that was interesting. And then, okay, anything particular why that motif, that Paisley motif is so particular to
Yeah,
Kashmir?
I mean, if you think about it, whether it is a Lucknowi dupatta or your Kanjivaram from down south or anywhere, it really is the Paisley, which is the leitmotif of India. And on most of the shawls, you will find Paisleys very embroidered in a very intricate manner. And interestingly, in the valley, mangoes don't even grow really. It's like literally, such an inclusive Indian thing that it's such a part of the cultural legacy.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. Yeah.
So, Aradhana, you had another movie I saw was now again in Ladakh. Something to do about the polo.
Yes.
So, what story do you have for that?
Yeah, so this was interesting in the sense that when I was doing my research and I got kind of obsessed and stuck that this was a story I wanted to do, because we were shooting for another film in a village in Ladakh, and there one of the elderly persons started telling me that how, when he was young, being in the village polo team was the thing, and how, people have stopped playing it, and it's really kind of getting extinct. So when I did research, I realized, which was true, there were hardly any teams left and village matches didn't happen. And then we tried to organize this match for us. And Leh has this only one ground, which is flat enough for the polo to be played. And we had everything sorted for the day, fixed. The teams had come from various places. And we reached there to realize that someone had organized a concert, a music concert, a liquor company. And I was like devastated that how are we going to do a polo match with such a din going on? And then there was divine intervention, because it happened to be a full moon night. And Ladakhis do not drink on the full moon night. So they couldn't have. So I was like, good karma. And we went and shot this polo match. Do have a look. It's very different from the polo you people play here.
Yeah. Nice.
A game with no rules. Well, none which are apparently followed. A game where man and beast move together in perfect synchronization. A game which is definitely not for the swish set or the faint-hearted. Welcome to a game of polo as it is played in Ladakh.
Ladakhi polo is rough and tough. There is no fall. We need ज़्यादा fall की तरफ danger की game सबसे as compared to down की polo की. यहाँ danger crossing बहुत होते हैं. वहाँ तो dodge देके polo खींचते हैं. यहाँ तो dodge उस पिच ने सीधे खींच के ले जाते.
Although its origins are lost in obscurity, it is generally believed that it came in marriage with the Balti princess Gyal Khatun, bride of King Jamyang Namgyal. The fact is that polo for centuries has been a very popular sport in these rugged mountain valleys of the Himalayan and Karakoram ranges. In India, Ladakh in the north and Manipur in the east are the last two surviving bastions of polo in this very different avatar. There are no genteel chukkers or change of mounts midway here. The pace is furious, the game continuous, and the tempo maintained right till the end. Apart from the men and horses, music is the other indispensable must in a polo match in Ladakh. Surna, the flute, and Daman, the drum. As the excitement on the field increases, so do the beat of the Daman and the note of the Surna. the musicians ensure that the adrenaline continues to flow fast and faster still. Even now, a game of polo in the village ground or shagaran means that there are just two categories of people: those playing and those cheering. In fact, to be a part of the village team till recently was considered a matter of great pride. However, progress, development, globalization have taken their toll. Changing lifestyles and urbanization mean that the locals have little time or inclination for a game once considered the king of games and the game of kings.
कम से कम 15 टीम आता था वहाँ, अभी तो सिर्फ 2 टीम ही रह गया।
वो तो बहुत बुरा लग रहा है। यही सबसे नई, यही लद्दाख का यही फेमस गेम है, यही खत्म होते जा रहा है अब।
But for these men on their horses, others can choose to play whatever games they may wish. For them, there is only one game worth playing, and that is the one they play.
Imagine playing at that altitude, you know? I mean,
Yes.
like, the people can hardly breathe.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very, very tough. Very
But,
tough.
I think nothing is complete in Kashmir also without the Wazwan.
Yes. I think for all of us, I think across India, food is very important. And I think we are so blessed. We have so many different kinds of cuisine. And so again, interestingly, as one, I wanted to do a story on the Wazwan. And so you have to remember, we were, shooting at a time when there was an ebb in the militancy for the first time after a decade. So you have to really go and look for the people to find the stories. So there's a place in downtown Srinagar called the Vazapura, where, traditionally all the Vazas live. Everything to do with the Wazwan, that is the hub for it. So we went there. Then the second challenge was to politely be invited for a wedding where we could go and shoot food being cooked, and because Vazas are very respected. There are family Vazas, and dates will be changed for the Vaza to be available for the wedding. And then what's very fascinating was that how influences from a lot of kitchens of India go into the Wazwan, really, and the spices. So I think have a look, you'll get an idea of what I'm saying. It'll be better.
Okay. So Rajiv, let's have a look at the gastronomical journey.
Kashmir, historically, culturally, geographically, has always been India's melting pot. Being at the crossroads has created in its mountains and vales an exciting mosaic of crisscrossing influences, often sublime. But to savor the actual flavor of this intermingling of influences, you have to embark on a gastronomical journey. Travel to a little corner of downtown Srinagar known as Vazapura, the city of chefs. Every nook, corner, and street of Vazapura exists to facilitate its residents' chief occupation, which is to cook. Or should it be said, to create elaborate feasts? For the Wazwan is no ordinary meal, but a culinary experience like no other. But this ultimate marriage of influences, recipes, and ingredients from pan-Indian kitchens has often meant that many a wedding in real has had to be postponed because the family Vaza was overbooked and had no time to prepare the wedding feast. Wazwans are normally held to celebrate an occasion, and a lot of preparation goes into them. Once all the ingredients have been collected, the team of Vazas get to work under the strict supervision of the head chef or Vasta Vaza. mind-boggling amounts of mutton are chopped, sliced, pounded and ground to cook the traditional dishes such as rista, gushtaba, rogan josh, tabak mas. All these and other dishes are cooked on a wood fire in covered pots. The Wazas pass on recipes which are often closely guarded family secrets from father to son. While the stamp of Mughal, Sikh, Dogra, Persian kitchens in cooking styles is apparent, the condiments and spices along with other ingredients come from practically all corners of India, including the southernmost, which give the Wazwan that unique, distinct flavor. For the Wazas, the taste of the pudding actually lies in its eating, as they see their guests relish every mouthful. But not for long, for it is the wedding season, and back in Wazapura, they have to begin preparation for the next Wazwan.
Yeah. So, Aradhana, you were telling something. Yeah, you were telling something. Something about the Wazwan, or about how they even waste food or something.
Yeah. So, in fact, when we were shooting, there was this movement going on there, because even I was appalled to know that traditionally, if after the feast, the next morning of the feast, if there was not food piled up outside, it was taken as a great offense. The host was considered a kanjoos, that there was no food wasted. And I think I don't know, I think 1.5 kilos of rice and mutton and everything went in one tarami. So at that time, there was a lot of people talking about how number of dishes should be, curtailed. The amount of food that is cooked should be not wasted. And also interestingly, like I said, that they couldn't make certain dishes, because if they started pounding the meat, then people would come to check and stop. So nobody could, and traditionally weddings and feasts happened at night in the valley. But once militancy came, they had to change it, and it started happening during the day because of security reasons. So a lot of lifestyle changes had to be made by the locals. It stayed back. Very tough.
Yeah. Okay. So anything more about Leh Ladakh?
Yeah, this is, I think the next one you're going to show is Prayers in Stone. And this is, it was very interesting. Though I went to a lot of monasteries like Lama Yoro, which is really back of beyond, and it's a lunar landscape. It's very fascinating. But Alchi is the oldest monastery there. And I think the story behind it, you will hear it in the film, so I won't tell you. Fascinated me. And to me, it is completely fascinating and mind-boggling at that time, in that age. I mean, we're talking of no internet, no phones, no communication, no trains, no planes, that such a pan-Indian inclusive thing could be made in a place like Ladakh, and not even in Leh, in Alchi, which is so far from Leh also. So I think, to my mind, that was what is really unique about Alchi. Do have a look.
One legend tells us that Losaba Rinchen Zangpo was traveling across the length and breadth of Ladakh on a tough mission. Having come all the way from Spiti, he was in search for an ideal spot where temples in praise of the Enlightened One could be built. Temples which would be unique. But all he saw was wilderness, stark barren hills, valleys and dunes. Many a sunset did he see, as also he saw the moon rise, but still the perfect spot eluded him. A little perturbed, he sat deep in meditation. Inspired, he selected a spot and planted his wooden staff there, and took a vow that upon returning, if the staff would have taken root, burst into leaves, the temples would be built right there at Alchi. The staff did take root to become a lush tree, sacred till date. And true to his word, Rinchen Zangpo began work on the temple. Master craftsmen, artists and artisans were invited from other parts of India. They came, especially from central India, to this wilderness to create magic. In fact, the Choskor, or religious enclave at Alchi, is unique. The paintings and mural adorning its walls, however, are almost identical in style and spirit to those found in the Ajanta caves. The temples at Alchi are very nearly the sole survivors of pre-Tibetan style of Buddhist painting and art current in India at that time. Abandoned centuries ago as a place of regular worship, Alchi is still a sacred site maintained by the monks of Likir, a nearby monastery. There is a beautiful folk song also which describes how Alchi got its name. One legend tells us
क्योंकि दरिया सिंह के ऊपर कोई पुल नहीं थे, तो आलची तो पहला गांव था। तो यहाँ से हमारे राजा महाराजा जो उस वक्त लोगों को ऐसे ही काम के लिए लाते थे, तो वो लोग को बिल्कुल ना सुना करते थे, इसलिए ना सुनाई को हम हाल चिंते बोलते हैं।
But that perhaps was true when able hands were required to build the temples a millennium ago. Today, the presence of the temples ensure that people from far and near come on their own to soak in the beauty of the temples and also that of Alchi. Perhaps divine and human creativity at its best.
Good one. Yes, Aradhana. Okay. So as we move on to the next one, I think now we have two more.
Yes. Yeah.
So, yeah. So which one would you like us to see?
Yeah. So this is really the legend of Sohni Mahiwal, and this was again like we met a local bard and he was singing about it, and then we came to know that this was where they lived and they loved and they died, and it's always these legendary romances are always so interesting. And then what kind of made the story again was a bit more interesting is that everybody I spoke to, they said yes, there is this temple, and you go a little further and there is this temple dedicated to Sohni Mahiwal. And like in border areas, they don't have petrol pumps. And so, we were running out of fuel, and we were like, asking, is it there? Why aren't we finding, where is it? Where is it? And we kept traveling, stopping, asking people. And then we kind of really reached the border, and we said, where is the temple, So then this gentleman says, oh, it's right here under the river, the floods came and the temple was submerged, but of course it's there, like, you don't have to see it to believe it. Of course the temple is there. And then you kind of question your own perspective. And interestingly, across the border also, there was a small shrine, a tree shrine. So do have a look at the story.
Once upon a time, long, long ago, somewhere in a town called Akhnur, lived a potter named Tulla. His pots were known far and wide, not only for their fine mix of clay and water, but also because of the flowers on the pots that his daughter Sohni drew. Centuries have passed since Tulla made the pots and Sohni drew flowers on them. But here, in this region, their legend lives on. Mirza Sahiban, Sohni Mahiwal, Heer Ranjha, Sassi Punnu, all legendary lovers coincidentally lived and loved on the banks of the Chenab.
क्योंकि इस चनाब दे पानी दे विच ही इश्क है जड़ा कि उन्हां नू अपने
It was also in these very waters that Sohni Mahiwal's ill-fated romance met its star-crossed end. On the 9th day of the 9th month, as the last rays of the sun drowned in the waters of the Chenab, so did Sohni, with her half-baked pot, on her way to keep her tryst with Mahiwal. And side by side they were found the next day, together in death, if not in life. Who was this Sohni? What is it about her that centuries after her fiery love for Mahiwal consumed them both, she continues to inspire poets, artists, writers, and also he sketches his muse, Sohni. Perhaps it's her earthiness, for she is no mythical nymph, but a creature of her.
Something, okay. A little bit, a little bit of the narration we missed out. But nevertheless, so very interesting. Huh? Everything was, I mean, like around the Chenab, there are so many romantic stories.
I didn't know that. I also discovered this there.
And imagine, I mean, like it's divided. Like we have two countries, you know.
Yeah, that bit you couldn't see, but just across it, yeah, they also have a shrine, apparently, with Sohni's picture carved on a tree. So just across the border, it's there.
So your final film, Aradhana, I think is also once again bringing the two countries together. In fact, you know, I mean, like
yes,
a story about twin villages. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is again interesting. I think what again it was one of those obscure newspaper cuttings which was talking about this mela that happens annually, and then we kind of read about it, that how traditionally it happened both in that, I suppose, in undivided India at that time, and then one village was in Pakistan, one in India, and it depends on what the circumstances are, but that year it was nice. The Pakistani Rangers also came for the prayers, and they're deeply revered on both sides. The saint is deeply revered. It was also my first, a glimpse of the barbed wire that was being put at that time on the border. And yeah, I suppose you have a look, and then if there are any questions, I'll take them.
So Rajiv, we can have the final film on the twin villages now.
Saidan Valley and Chamlial were twin villages with common trees, crops, birds, and even a common saint, Dalip Singh Manhas. Dalip Singh Ji had a large following in the area, and though a Hindu, Muslims far outnumbered Hindus and Sikhs as his disciples. Legend further says that one day Dalip Singh Ji was assaulted and beheaded. His head was buried at Chamlial and body at Saidan Valley village. The twin villages now even had twin shrines, both of their beloved saint. Except over time, Chamlial became a little more important because, as Babaji told one of his followers in a dream, the soil shakar and the water sharbat could cure all and any skin ailment. Jamlial's fame spread, and sufferers came from far and near in search of a cure. Nothing changed for 300 years. Every second Thursday in the month of Ashad, both villages celebrated a Mela together in memory of their saint. But then, partition came, and the twin villages suddenly had a border in between. Saidan Valley found itself in Pakistan, and Jamlial became a part of India. For the followers of Baba Dalip Singh Ji, it seemed like their Baba's body had been severed once again from its head. Things worsened with time.
अभी तो बिल्कुल ऐसे बहुत दूर हो गए हैं, इतने के भी ऐसे भी ज़्यादा.
Guns and artillery drowned the joyous sounds of drums. From where had come flowers and chadars to pay obeisance came indiscriminate firing, hurting both the shrine and the spirit of Baba Jamlial.
उनकी जो फायरिंग है पाकिस्तान की बहुत ज़बरदस्त आती थी. जब हम खेती करते थे तो वो हमारे ऊपर गोलियों की बौछार कर देते थे.
But this year, after a long time, India's peace overtures bore fruit. After great persuasion, the Pakistani Rangers accepted the Indian Border Security Force's invitation to participate in the Mela. On June 24th, the second Thursday in the month of Ashad, once again, the guns fell silent and the drums took over. A group of Pakistani Rangers, their families, and a few local representatives from Saidan Valley came with the chadar and flowers as offerings for Baba Jamlial. Tankers containing shakkar soil and sharbat water were sent as prasad from the Indian side. A multitude of humanity on both sides tried hard to catch a glimpse of the other, a neighbor so near, yet so far. Baba Jamlial's Mela was once again a joyous occasion, as his disciples on both sides fleetingly forgot differences to celebrate together, with reverence and love, in peace once again.
Actually, that was really interesting, Aradhana. Rajiv, I think we should now unmute everyone and we can all have an interaction with our famous producer, director. So over with some questions or some reactions or any other form of interaction. Rajiv, everybody is unmuted.
You have narrated and curated so well that we don't have any questions to ask. Really nice. Sunita was giving us the upbeat of what's going to come up next. You know, Aradhana was telling us in between glimpses. We got as if it was just taking us through the journey.
Thank you.
Beautifully done. Beautifully done.
Incredible journey.
Thank you.
That was lovely.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
That was just wonderful.
There are more actually. There are 24 short films and a 50-minute long film. They're on the Public Diplomacy Government of India website, if any of you want to see the others. So they're online. They're available on YouTube.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful.
No, we'll have some of your other films also again shortly, Aradhana. They've been brought out very, very well. Really.
Certainly,
Thank you.
certainly. Looking forward.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So, thank you very much, Aradhana.
My
And,
pleasure.
I believe you're still very busy making a lot of films. I think you very recently made films even on the Kisan agitation and things like that.
Actually, I work on women's movements, so that's what I was covering. Right now, I'm doing something on rainwater harvesting. Actually, that's also led by women and schoolgirls. And I'm doing something very close to my heart. I am working actually in the lockdown because I've done a lot of work in busties, and I realized just how tough the kids were having. So I started something called Digitally Yours, an initiative to collect old laptops and PCs for them. So that's kind of keeping me busy. We've done the first phase with about 5-6 centers. Now we start the second
That
one.
is quite close to what we do at the Rotary also. I mean, like we also
okay.
Children, like our basic what do you say?
Visionist for children.
Receivers, yeah.
Vision. Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's great. All right. Okay. Great.
So thank you very much, Aradhana. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for calling me and having me over. My pleasure complete.
On behalf of Rotary.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, the Rotary Club of Delhi Garden City. I really thank you and look forward to having you more often with us.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone.